Okay, um, good afternoon. This is Attorney Catherine Henry, just coming to you live with a Michigan Supreme Court case update. Just wanted to, man, I guess I'll have to wait a minute. I had already 30 people in the first 15 seconds of going live on my page, so I'll wait a second to make sure everybody has a chance to come back over that was over on that feed. Okay, looks like we at least had around the same numbers that we had a moment ago. So, just wanted to let you all know about the update today. So, in case you've been living under a rock, I'll give you some background. But the Michigan Supreme Court had a hearing today that was originally scheduled for September 2nd. It was scheduled to start at 9:30 today. Those of us who were scheduled to argue were told to be on between 9 and 9:20 basically. I was actually getting worried that something was wrong with my connection because they didn't have us started until, I don't know, it was after 9:30 anyway, but we got a hold of the Michigan Supreme Court clerk, and he said nope, we were just waiting basically for some technological issues to be sorted out. So then they got us into the Zoom meeting, but then it took a little while for them to get the YouTube live channel up and running, the Supreme Court's channel. So we got that up and running, and I kept my game face on. Yeah, that was hard because there's some, anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So we got started. The plaintiff's attorney went first. She is the one that's representing the 3 doctors' offices and the 1 plaintiff, or the 1 patient, I should say, who was denied medical treatment during the COVID-19 executive orders stuff. And so she went for, well, she actually went for over 30 minutes because they questioned her, but then they allowed her to have some of her time saved up anyway at the end as well. And then I got to go next. I was given 5 minutes, and man, I let you guys down. I did not. I stayed up till 5:45 a.m. Yeah. I stayed up till 5:45 a.m. working on how to narrow this down. As you know, my biggest problem is how to give you guys all the pertinent information in the shortest amount of time possible. And there's always more information I could give you, always more information. So anyway, I was able to get quite a bit of the information. I'm going to go through in just a moment and tell you the parts that I planned on speaking about that I didn't end up getting to say. After me, Attorney Michael Williams for the Legislature, he was also just an amicus because this was not their case, so he only got 5 minutes as well. He had 2 justices asking him questions though. So I was a little jealous because nobody asked me any questions. I was hoping for that door to be opened so I could fit in some more of the information that I had, some of the points that the other attorneys were not making. Again, I don't think they're bad attorneys. I think the plaintiff's attorney, you know, she's a good attorney. I think she's calm and cool and collected about oral argument and everything else, and her brief looks very well done, and it looks like it follows Blue Book citation method and stuff like that. And same, I could say the same with Michael Williams, attorney for the Legislature. But man, to see in there when you have an attorney who's supposedly on our side saying, well, the governor was totally fine, everything in her orders was totally fine for the first 51 days. What? So I had to change what I was saying this morning after I thought I'd already had it almost done, and hence I had more stuff that didn't end up getting talked about later on. But anyway, so then after me went the attorney for the, was that the Attorney General? No, that was not the attorney. That was for the governor and the Michigan Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. And then well, I'm going to give you that update in a sec. Well, okay, so basically then after that was the attorney for the Attorney General's office, and then after that was the attorney, an amicus attorney who represented the House Democratic Caucus. So he got 5 minutes, although he was questioned for quite some time. And actually the governor's attorney was questioned an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, it was a long time. So anyway, some of the key points that I didn't get to share today, well, I'll just tell you real quick. I actually don't have time to tell you my whole 5-minute spiel that I was going to do. Those of you, well, you know what? If you have an internet connection, which you do now if you're watching this, you'll be able to watch the video later. We're going to share it as well in a little bit, and it'll also be available on the Michigan Supreme Court's YouTube channel. It'll be available on our YouTube channel. We'll either share it or we'll just download it and re-upload it to ours. Anyway, so some of the key points I did not get to share. Let's see, separation of powers. Did I talk about that? Yes. So, okay. So one of the few things I didn't get to share was how Article 5, Section 2 only allows executive orders to happen by the governor if she's just reorganizing the executive branch. And even in those situations, she has to give the legislature basically a 60-day heads up. They can determine in that 60 days if they want to disapprove of her reorganizing her own executive branch. And of course, she's not doing that with any of these executive orders. She's not reorganizing the executive branch. She's also not giving the legislature a 60-day heads up before she implements these things. Also something that I think I very briefly was able to go over, but regardless of what state law says, the Michigan Constitution supersedes state law. And the Constitution expressly prohibits the governor from using legislative power in Article 3, Section 2 of our state constitution. Also, the governor is heavily relying on this Section 51 public health power, she's calling it. However, that's only found in Article 4 of Section 51 of our state constitution. Article 4 belongs to the legislature. So our constitution, our state constitution, allows only the legislature to handle matters of public health. And I thought that's very important because one of the I think it was the Attorney General, their office was arguing that no, she's not the only one that gets to do that. Well, I was going to hammer on that point because there's nothing in Section 5 of our state constitution, which is her authoritative section. But anyway, I'm about to get yelled at because we have to go. But I was also going to argue a bunch about the other ways that she's violating our state constitution with these executive orders, treating them like they're laws, but then not complying with the ways that laws are required to be in the state of Michigan. So for example, she is violating all the requirements for lawmaking, including in Article 4, Section 22, 24, 25, and 27. I'm going to be right there. Yep. Told you guys I was going to get yelled at. Anyway, it was a silent yell. Anyway, so those provisions, which I don't have quite up anymore, basically there's a limit. You can't have a law that covers more than one subject. You can't enforce a law within the first 90 days after it's passed, unless it's passed by a supermajority in the House and the Senate. You can't have, if you're going to modify a law, let's say like the Open Meetings Act or FOIA, which she has done, you can't do that unless you are basically retyping up and including the entirety of the statutes that you're referencing. And Section 22 that I mentioned is the one that says all laws have to be passed by a bill. She's not doing that. She's doing it by executive order. And then what about the delegation of power analysis that all the other attorneys and the prior judges in this case, they've all been talking about? Well, what I really wanted to say is that it's an irrelevant distraction. I didn't get to say that. I ran out of time. So they're trying to extrapolate and talk about, well, there's a delegation, a constitutional delegation of power that I just talked about, Article 5, Section 2, that's just her reorganizing the executive branch. They're trying to talk about how that's permissible and then extrapolate that as to how the statutory delegation of power in this case works. Well, no, the constitutional delegation of power is constitutional because it's written in the Constitution. So all these other tests that they're doing, it's irrelevant. It's garbage. It's nonsense. Anyway, so I was going to point out that they are fatally flawed with that because, like I said, it's constitutional in that situation because the text of that delegation is actually in the Constitution. So where does that leave us? The only thing I was going to say in my strongly narrowed down arguments, because I had quite a bit more to say, was that the Michigan Constitution preamble explains that we are created by, what did I write on there? We created our constitutions to secure our blessings of freedom given to us by Almighty God. That's what it says in our Michigan State Constitution preamble. And those freedoms include many enumerated rights, which I was going to go item by item about, but also knew I was going to run out of time. But those include non-enumerated rights that are reserved for us in Article 1, Section 23. Just because we enumerate our right to bear arms and our right to free speech and our right to worship God according to our own conscience, those are enumerated rights, but we retain a whole bunch more that God gave us, like the ability to breathe fresh air and not have to wear a mask in public, which, by the way, Justice Bernstein really hammered on a very interesting point with that one today. So what I was going to urge them is that when deliberating on the issues of standing, justiciability, mootness, I wanted them to remember their Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution and Michigan Constitution, Article 11, Section 1, oath that requires them to uphold the Michigan and U.S. constitutions, whether they think the provisions within them are wise or not, and whether they think the concept of wearing a mask is keeping people safe or not. But anyway, I didn't get to talk about that, and now we are on our way to the county building for some stuff, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you guys that quick update at least, and a better update later on today, hopefully. I did only get like an hour, so maybe it won't be today if I fall asleep at some point, but anyway, at least there you have it. We ended the hearing at what time was that? About 1:15 or 1:30 we ended that hearing. So there is no answer yet on when the court will decide that case. But number one, the court could decide to not give an answer, technically. They could decide, well, okay, so apparently when I'm in the car, it's just gonna cut out. So I was ending anyway. I just wanted to tell you guys that we don't have an answer yet about when the court will, yeah, something's wrong. It says I'm live, but it doesn't have any of the normal buttons. Okay. All right, so at least one person's on now. It's something, anyway, it doesn't look like it's working right. Anyway, sorry guys, my phone lost signal and then it ended the Facebook Live feed. All I was trying to do was to wrap up here with this update and tell you guys that they didn't tell us when they would issue the decision. I mean, man, that was a long hearing. We started a little bit late, but just roughly say 9:30, and we went till 1:15, 1:30. I mean, that was a long time. So I'm glad that I got to go first, or, you know, I was second, but I was the first amicus because you know, at some point people start tuning out. I was having a hard time keeping track or paying attention. I'd hear things every now and then, but it is just, I mean, that's probably the lack of sleep talking, but it was hard to listen for that many hours about all these issues, especially when I've heard the same arguments over and over again, and I've read the briefs, and it's like, okay, guys, you still don't know how to read the Constitution. I thought there were a lot of really good questions, though. I thought Justice Markman, I know some of you were commenting on different feeds that he seemed against us. The ones that I was paying attention to, or I guess the questions that I was focusing on that he was asking actually seemed like really good questions. And Justice Bernstein surprised me because he had some really great questions as well. Justice Clement even asked a few, or Justice Kavanaugh. I think the only one that didn't ask questions that I was like, oh yeah, that's really thought-provoking, was Bridget McCormick, our Chief Justice. That could be because she's essentially running the whole show and she's just got a lot on her mind. She didn't ask a ton of questions, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not like she asked a bunch of questions, but they were really meaningless. It's that the other justices ended up asking, I think, a lot more questions. So yeah, Justice Viviano, he did an excellent job, just kept hammering home the Constitution. There were some times, I want to say it was with the governor's attorney, and he was, they kind of went back and forth a little bit, and the attorney was getting a little snippy, and Justice Viviano was saying something like, oh, I guess they don't like how we the people decided to create our Constitution back a couple hundred years ago. Did you hear him say that? Oh. Well, anyway, too bad Mike didn't catch that. There were some times, I really did try to have a good poker face, but there were times that I was either somebody said something that was just so off the wall, I was like, what? Or, one of the justices would catch one of these guys being a creep, and then they would, corner him on the Constitution or something, and then I was like, yeah, awesome. I'm like, oh crap, I'm still on Zoom. I have to just smile and look professional. So, anyway, it was long, but, and I didn't get through everything I wanted, but I do know that they were listening because, let's see, I think Justice Clement ended up referencing some of the stuff I brought. I mean, I only had 5 minutes, but she ended up referencing some of the stuff I talked about later on in her questioning of other attorneys. And Justice Viviano ended up saying something. I forgot what it was now. Do you remember what it was? Well, I know one of the things was he was questioning the attorney for the governor, actually, on how many days it had been. And I had looked up last night, and today actually marks 6 months. It marks 183 days, or 26 weeks since this all began, since she declared a state of emergency in Michigan. 183 days. So it was, yeah. So that was the very first thing I pointed out in my oral argument. I started off by thanking the court for their time and for me being able to participate, and then I said, all right, so I want to point out that today is 183 of being in this executive order, and she's extended it into the future by Executive Order 2020-177. So then I was also planting that seed that there's at least 177 orders out there, because the plaintiff's attorney seemed to think that there was still only about 150 orders, and we're actually up to 179. At least as of 4 o'clock this morning. So I think it's important that we show how ridiculous those numbers are and get that information out there. So anyway, that was a point that Justice Viviano was hammering on, and just brought that up anyway in context. So I think overall it went really well. I really wish I had had more time. I wish I had been able to get across some of those other points that I really wanted to talk about, especially the justices' oaths. Like there were times that Justice Markman was talking about things, and he was saying, well, don't you think, the statute requires this or requires that? And so ordinarily it would have been a decent question, but my argument goes beyond that. My argument is that well, I guess let me back up and say, I didn't quite read this into her original brief, and then I was going over her reply brief, the plaintiff's reply brief, late last night, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. She actually said in there that the governor was totally fine. She was complying with the law, with the statutes, and with the Constitution for the first 51 days. Once April 30th hit, then she was no longer complying with the statute. And therefore she also wasn't complying with the Constitution, is essentially what she said. So one of the very first things I said, aside from the fact that we are now 6 months into this, is I said, we're 6 months in, but our state and federal constitutions do not actually allow for our personal liberties to be set aside or trampled upon, or for the government to be able to step outside of the bounds of their governmental authority even for 5 minutes, even in a time of emergency. And I pointed out, in fact, that our state constitution, Article 4, Section 39, requires that in a state of emergency, our state and local governments continue to operate, which of course the governor has shut down. So I argued that, but I said because of these factors, I would actually argue that although I agree that the governor actually acted legally, she acted lawfully, in other words, she was following state law until April 30th, I said that at no point in time were any of her orders constitutional. So she might have been following state law, but state law is leading us astray, because the state law is actually where we find problems with constitutionality. So the justice said that the 1945 recall would still need to be voted on in 2022. I think that might have been Justice Clement. I so badly wanted to pipe up and say, well, actually, if Unlock Michigan gets all the signatures, then it will go to the legislature, and then the legislature will vote on it or not. And if they don't get enough votes, or they don't choose to vote on it, then it goes to the 2022 ballot. But I think the point was that it's going to take some time, because it is going to take some time. I mean, they have 180 days, just like I do with the Restore Freedom Initiative petition, to be able to get all those signatures and get them turned into the Secretary of State. So, and my understanding is that they're going to, I mean, I haven't gotten any direct updates. I just word of mouth kind of thing that I've heard, is that they're not really validating all theirs. They're just kind of doing some sampling of validation. So they're going for a bigger number than what they otherwise would have needed to account for not validating all of those. So if they're doing that, my understanding is they're going to try to stretch out and use all the time that they really have available to them. So I think what her point was, because they're doing it that way, the political process of doing initiated legislation like that is not very quick, because some of the attorneys were arguing, well, you can always recall the governor, and you can always do initiated legislation to change it, and you can always do all these other things. And I'm like, you know what? The people have been trying to recall her for months, but she keeps appealing them and then not actually filing crap, and then the Court of Appeals is not actually closing out their cases administratively like they should. They're leaving those cases open. So Chad's appeal is still going. I don't know if you guys knew that. Chad's original recall petition that the governor appealed, nothing had been done in that 40 days. So the law says that he should have been able to start being able to circulate that, only we were under the impression that he had withdrawn the petition, but at this point it doesn't look like it was withdrawn. It looks like it's still going and it's in the court process. And now there are at least 2 other petitions that he had filed, I think, that had gotten approved, or maybe they weren't his, they were a different group that had gotten approved, and then she, of course, waited till the 10th day and filed appeals, and then you know, the appellate briefs weren't quite filed yet. I believe we might have some appellate briefs available now, but they're not abiding by that 40-day rule. In fact, that case, I want to say the 40 days should be up within the next week. At any rate, yeah, so that's kind of the update on that. I feel like that was a little scatterbrained because there's so many different pieces I wanted to update you on, but as soon as I hear a decision, you guys know that I will go online, I will give you the update, I will let you know what I've heard. I'm also going to be filing an amicus brief as soon as I possibly can in the legislature's lawsuit against the governor at the Michigan Supreme Court, because it was not clear if the court intends to actually decide the case through this other matter that was brought before it today. So I will file an amicus brief in that case, and of course every time I do that there's court filing fees and everything else, so I appreciate those of you who are donating to my law firm so I can continue to pay those court filing fees and get those briefs filed with the court, and you know, continue to go through reams of paper and many drums things print. In the last few days, I think in the last week, we've printed 7,000.
2 reams of paper.
Yeah, but there were some already in there. So I'd say there's 7,000 copies, double-sided, because I don't like to kill trees. Double-sided pieces of double-sided pieces of paper, you know, just in the last few days. That's just the most recent brief. So anyway, so I do appreciate those of you who are for $10 and you can help contribute towards those court filing fees and things like that. I do really appreciate that. And I'm actually on my way to a courthouse right now, so we'll see. And I also, in the near future, plan to be able to announce to our circulators and captains the counts we need left remaining in each county, but I'm only one person, and I haven't been able to quite finish all that and finagle all the, you know, get everything together in one place, because we have numbers we have counted in one spot, and then we have numbers from what we're validating in another spot, and there's just like a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm trying to make sure it's all organized. The Supreme Court stuff. So thanks for being patient and waiting for me to be able to get that information out to you. And also I will be getting information out about the upcoming elections, because we have one of those Court of Appeals judges that ruled against the legislature. She's up for election this year, and we need to talk about some good alternatives to vote her out of there. And we also have our Michigan Supreme Court Chief Justice who is up for election this year. So just wanted to yes, I was definitely the only unpaid person on that. Definitely the only one volunteering all my time. But anyway, so we'll get that information out. I want to make sure that we do get some good alternatives available to you, and I'll try to get information on various statewide candidates that would be available. But again, that's all going to take some time, and I don't have a lot of that. Anyway, thank you. And if I have the opportunity, I will try to do some more question and answer later on that topic a little bit later. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions real quick that I could be answering. And just a reminder, if you guys, I'm not seeing any new ones. If you guys, my Facebook has been messed up for months. So if you're sending me personal messages, like to my personal account on Facebook, I don't get them. In fact, it has started trying to give me notifications again, but I can't open and reply and see what. I literally have not been able to receive any Facebook messages since late April, beginning of May, something like that. So definitely reach me. That is not the way to go. Depending on what you need, check out our website, quite frankly, because depending on what you're looking for, the information is either on there, ready for you, right at your fingertips, or it'll help get you in touch with the person that can actually answer your question the quickest. So if it's about events, then our events coordinator can get back to you. If it's about stuff with our captains, she can get back to you. If it's about signing locations, that person can get back to you. If it's truly a question for me, then, you know, it helps narrow down anyway. So if you, I think that was one of our yard signs down on the ground back there. Just could be wrong, but anyway. So if you do have questions for me, again, just don't send me Facebook Messenger messages, because I don't get them. So I'm not ignoring you. I really don't get them. How can you email me? Again, depending on what you're trying to get to is or whatnot. You know, restorefreedommi@gmail.com might be the way to go. Restorefreedommi for Michigan @gmail.com might be the best way to get a hold of us. But it just really depends. I mean, if you send something there, we'll get it to where it needs to go, but that's not necessarily going to be the most direct place, depending on what your question is. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and hopefully my update was at least a little bit helpful for you guys. Thanks.